Well, the big guns are really out for Farage now, aren't they? Apparently, Farage is Putin's secret lover, and all the papers and the news media are blaring, "Farage excuses Putin." Well, was he excusing Putin? Or was he talking a little bit of sense? I'm going to be discussing that after I've told you that I'm granniopteryx. Let's see what he actually said.
In the West, not him. You said, I'll just read it to you and then you can react, that on a tweet, it was a consequence of EU and NATO expansion. Is that a judgment you stand by?
Right. I'll tell you what you don't know. I stood up in the European Parliament in 2014 and I said, and I quote, "There will be a war in Ukraine." Why did I say that? It was obvious to me that the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man a reason to his Russian people to say they're coming for us again and to go to war.
But you were echoing him.
I was, sorry.
You were echoing him. That's what Putin says.
No. Sorry, I've been saying this actually since the 1990s. Ever since the fall of the wall. But hang on a second. We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
But I'm asking you about, because it's your judgment, you want to be Prime Minister. Let me ask you about someone else.
My judgment has been way ahead of everybody else's in understanding this.
I want to ask you about another leader that you said you admired.
Okay, so you see Nick Robinson doing what he was accusing Farage of doing, actually, wiggling out of the argument. But that's another discussion. And since then, we've had this sort of thing. Nigel Farage criticised for saying West provoked Putin to invade Ukraine. That was AP. This is The Guardian. Farage doubles down on claim West provoked Ukraine invasion. The Independent. With his Putin comments, Nigel Farage has reminded us who he really is. And this is Sky News. Nigel Farage sounds like Putin's poodle, and they're all taking the same line, which strikes me as being somewhat suspicious. However, first of all, I have to say I don't happen to agree with him 100% on his attitude to Ukraine. But since when has it been a rule that voting for someone requires you are completely of one mind with them? In my opinion, Putin was obviously pursuing an expansionist policy. I'm just telling you my opinion before I get on to Farage, because I don't think Farage was wrong either. But I thought I should explain my position first. Putin was obviously pursuing an expansionist policy. Most people seem to have forgotten that he started a land-grabbing war with Georgia in 2008. But even a tyrant like Putin has to have at least some of the people with him if they're going to be sending their menfolk off with guns to be shot at, and if they have to suffer the privations of a war economy. If you're going to ask your people to do that, then there has to be an excuse. But not only an excuse, the person who's doing that has to feel he has a realistic chance of success. And that's where I can see Farage is 100% right. The EU and NATO gave him that excuse, but they were not prepared to deny him that realistic chance of success. Just look at our weak and flabby militaries. In Germany, the military scarcely deserved to be called an army. It's so marshmallow. NATO at the time was more of a bureaucracy than a war machine. People were even talking about winding it down. Yes, They've smartened up since then. We've all smartened up. But it's a bit late, isn't it? And that's one of the most important points that Mr. Farage made. He said, if you're going to, I didn't find the quote in that thing, but you must remember it. It's in that video, in the rest of that video somewhere. If you're going to poke the Russian bear, you can expect that bear to react. And in that, he is, of course, absolutely 100,000% correct. If you're going to poke a bear, then it is the height of folly to approach the bear wearing a t-shirt, shorts and sandals and armed with nothing bigger than a stick. The bear will not react if the bear thinks you're stronger than the bear. The bear will retreat. But if you go and poke a bear and you have nothing in your hands but a stick, you are in trouble. And if you're going to give a mad dictator like Putin an excuse, you should be at least prepared to deal with the reaction that is going to come. Was Europe prepared to deal with his reaction? You know, absolutely not. Let's just take a look at that famous clip from a speech by that dreadful man who turned out to be correct all along. Let's have a look at that.
Dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign.
Just look at their faces. Just look at them, looking at each other for validation, smirking and grinning, while he's telling them the truth. Let's carry on.
Powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe.
Okay, so yeah, that terrible man who was saying nothing but the truth. At the same time as Europe was guzzling Russian oil and gas like there was no tomorrow, they were directly aggravating him. Ukraine, an independent state, I have to remind you, has had every right to make common cause with NATO if it wanted. And Russia's subsequent behaviour proves that Ukraine had every reason to look for an umbrella. However, if the EU and NATO were going to do what they damn well democratically wanted to do, then they should have been prepared to defend their position. It's like you go and sit at somebody's table and are eating their food in huge quantities, and you're sitting there in between gulping down spoonfuls of food, flicking soup at the host. That's just rude and stupid, because if you flick soup at someone, then unless you have a set of bodyguards right behind you, then you can expect some soup to come back at you. But Putin saw there were no bodyguards back there. There was just a team of rimless glasses intellectuals smirking from inside their well-designed and probably very expensive suits. And because of that, an expansionist dictator thought there was a chance of success. And that's what Farage was saying. Right, and that's my take on this disgraceful media feeding frenzy in an attempt to bring Farage down. It's not going to work, because most people really know what's going on. They are treating us like complete idiots, and we're not. They are. Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by clicking like, by subscribing, by clicking the notification bell, and by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels are in the description, also links to donation sites, but really the best way you can help me is simply by clicking like. Thank you.